Today, President Trump hosted a meeting at the White House with members of the law enforcement community. He says police departments will continue to be funded. This comes as calls to reduce funds for police departments across the country grow following the death of George Floyd. Fox News correspondent Ray Bogan has more.
House and Senate Democrats took a knee for an 8-minute moment of silence in honor of George Floyd. Then they introduced the Justice in Policing Act, a bill that already has more than 200 co-sponsors.
Where Black Americans disproportionately and unjustifiably experience violence at the hands of the police.
The bill would require body and dashboard cameras, limit transfer of military weapons to state and local departments, and ban chokeholds and no-knock warrants in drug cases. It also lowers the bar for qualified immunity, which shields police from lawsuits.
A profession where you have the power to kill should be a profession that requires highly trained officers who are accountable to the public.
We cannot settle for anything less than transformative structural change.
But there may be limits to structural change. Black Lives Matter protesters around the country are calling for police departments to be defunded. Yet there appears to be little support for such a move on the federal level.
There won't be defunding. There won't be dismantling of our police.
Joe Biden does not want to defund police departments. The presumptive Democratic nominee proposed $300 million in funding for community policing in his criminal justice plan. A campaign official states this funding would also go towards diversifying police departments so that they resemble the communities in which they serve. At the White House, there has been talk of President Trump giving a speech on racial inequality, but so far, nothing is planned. Ray Bogan, Fox News.